skip number 4, which is here. If somebody else feels otherwise.
You mean
Oh,
number
she is?
5?
It's on
5, I'm on.
Sure.
I think we have to do an
She's coming up as
interim.
we speak.
She's coming up?
That's what JD just said.
All right. Anybody know any good jokes? Good jokes?
No.
For Big's company? Oh, here's Anthony.
Can be.
Oh, down at the end.
You know, you need a sign. Why doesn't she have a?
Yeah, why don't you have a sign?
You wanna borrow mine? He's just as important as everybody else.
Stop. She's in court all week.
Oh,
I'm waiting for you, Anthony.
that's what I was worried about. I just got back from a thing with the mayor and I had a couple phone calls.
You had a thing? You had a thing?
A thing with the mayor, yeah. Walking tour with the mayor. Hello. Hi. Hello.
But yes, but thank you, God. The judge just released me. Understand.
Were you in serious trouble?
I've been in a lawsuit for 6 years. What the county is right now, but anyway, we finally got the trial. And I was on the stand today. Okay, thank you. All right. Ain't signing my life away.
Just part of it.
Wanna know.
50%.
Been enough signing. You finished it. Okay. I'm a native of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I was born and raised here. Graduate of St. Thomas Aquinas High School. Attended George Washington University, Atlanta University, and a PhD in conflict analysis and resolution, and economist by degree in quantitative economics. I've had the opportunity to hold jobs developing countries and the rest of the world doing economic development work. Came back to Fort Lauderdale to help take care of parents who are now both deceased. And I am currently fighting a legal lawsuit to save one of the historic buildings here in Fort Lauderdale, the Pride of Fort Lauderdale. And also I am the president of Destination Sistrum, which is a historic and cultural preservation site where we do arts and culture.
Maybe we should go around the table and just introduce ourselves.
Yes.
I'm Michael Albetta. Should we say a little something or?
You do.
Oh, excuse me, I do apologize, okay. I'm a community civic activist and I'm the president of my local civic association, which is Lake Ridge, and also I work for the, I have the pleasure of working for the Broward County Property Appraiser's Office. I'm with the Mobile Exemption Education team. And I'm also involved in different projects, and one of my recent claim to fame was, which is an ongoing project, was the USS Fort Hall, which we brought in. I was the under vice chair of outreach, and it was quite an accomplishment to work with the city and the United States Navy and to see all. Actually, the final day I got to sit with the actual Secretary of the Navy and the commanding chief of the United States Navy, and also the United States Marines. So that was like, I was like very surreal, you know. I was having breakfast with them. Anyway.
Okay, I'll stand up because I'm hidden by all these men.
Okay,
And Nadine and I know each other,
Yes.
so it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
Mary Peliquin, right now I'm the president of the Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Associations until Tuesday, and somebody else is. And I was the president of Coral Ridge, where I live now, and I was on the Parks Board. I'm a retired HR executive. My last position was with the Seminole Tribe of Florida in their hotel and gaming industry. Prior to that, almost 20 years I worked in the Bahamas, what is now Atlantis, but when I first got there it was something else. So, welcome, good to see you.
Yes, absolutely.
Nadine, my name is Dan McCauley, nice to meet you. I also am a native. I grew up here, went to Walker Elementary, graduated from Fort Lauderdale High, class of 90. I'm a partner with Greenberg Traurig, which is the largest law firm in Florida. My practice is primarily commercial real estate. And also 4 kids, and happy to be on the board with you.
My pleasure to meet you.
And hello, I'm Richard Weiss. I'm an attorney, sort of retired, but not really. Did a lot of governmental law when I was practicing. Live in Fort Lauderdale, 3 boys, all out of the house.
Yeah.
And little woodworking, little golf, little civic stuff. So,
My pleasure to meet you.
all right. So next is we've already approved the minutes. And
Richard, would you like staff to just introduce ourselves?
oh, that's okay. That was rude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just so you.
You're right.
Paul, you want to start down there?
Just saying, and I'm saying that. Do I know somebody's face? Well, I know that face down there.
I'm Paul Bengal. I am in the city attorney. I'm an attorney in the city attorney's office. I've been with the city for 21 and a half years, and I've been involved with the Charter Revision Board since the early 2000s.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Bush. I'm an assistant city attorney with the city. I've been here 3-4 months. But I've been with the city about 3-4 years, but I was a risk manager.
Anthony Fajardo, I'm assistant city manager. I guess my biggest claim to fame is right now I'm the only non-acting assistant city manager until April. I've been with the city almost 20 years. I do provide support to IT and public works, and I'm also heading up the police department headquarters project, which has been stressful. But yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Pat Riley, City Auditor. I've been here around almost 3 years now. I've worked on Broward County Schools for 20 and also worked in Miami for a while. My daughters went to St. Thomas. I don't know, as you say, they're out of the house now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
My class.
And I'm David Solomon, city clerk. Been the city clerk for 3 years, been with the city for 16.
Okay.
Oh, can I just, I'd like to
Oh, yeah, let's, how about our
Introduce Jim
regulars?
Concanon.
How about our regulars?
Hi folks, I haven't had a chance to meet you, or you, nice to meet you. Jim Concanon, I'm the current president of Sunrise Universal Homeowners Association, the corresponding secretary in the executive committee for the Council Civic Association, and I run a high-tech systems integration company that deals specifically with airport air traffic controllers. Short, sweet.
Jim also, don't be shy, he's also the liaison for the council for the Charter Revision Board. I know it seems silly because there's two of us from the council on it, but we're not allowed to talk. So he's our
No, we
voice.
can't, right, so I'm the liaison to the council.
I think you know our former chair, Judy. Sir.
Judy Stern. Yes, I know Nadine for a long time and been on and off this charter board since 2006 with historical records and knowledge. And I've been very involved in all forms of government, from local, state, national, and around with the Code of Ethics and the governance over municipal officials. And the spokesperson, I've done speaking engagements on this, after the League of Cities of.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Sheila Pelzer, and I'm working with Daughter Hankerson on the JMT program.
Okay, great, welcome. Thank you. Okay, Judy was our chair for me, did a great job for many years, and now she's not, so we need to have a new chair.
Can we make nominations at this point?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I would like to nominate Richard Weiss for chairman of the Charter Revision Board.
I second that. Like a lot better.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
I would like to, as vice chair,
Oh, yes.
I'd like to nominate Mary Peliquin as the vice chair for the board.
I second that.
I third it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay, so Nadine, for your benefit, last time what we did was we directed a communication to the city commission because historically what we did was we had, the prior group had done a lot of work, a lot of serious and I think very good work on the charter. And we presented it to the city commission in a package. And it was not really well received. They appreciated the work, but they felt like it was too much and it was too quick and all of that. And so we felt like before we got started again, we wanted to get some direction from them as to how they wanted to proceed. So we directed a communication to them which they heard yesterday. And we had two questions. So the first question was, are we working towards some sort of a deadline? And which is, I think as you know, this charter, in order to get adopted, any amendments to the charter need to go on the ballot. So are we working towards a particular ballot? And they said, yes, we are. We're working for the, Mary was there to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
And they said we are working towards the ballot, and they directed the city clerk's office to provide us with a sort of a timeline as to when our work needed to be done in order to do that. So the second question was how they want our work to be presented to them. And recognizing that we gave them more than they wanted the first time. There was a lot of discussion, but Mary, again, my view, the way I took away was they do want this, I'm not gonna say piecemeal, they want this in parts, and they would like us to deal with the topic at a time. For instance, one of the things we discussed was the elections. One of the things we discussed was city lands, those kind of things. And they I think that they want us to give that to them in those kind of,
Like in sections.
in
Sections,
sections.
correct.
And also simultaneously with that, because I asked them, the other thing that they felt like we might have done better last time was public output, public input and getting the word around and all that kind of thing. And all of our meetings are public, they're all on the website and et cetera, but they wanted more. And last time we were here, someone from the communications department was here, I don't recall her name. But the city commission seemed to want, simultaneously with our work, she wanted the communications department to reach out to the community, let them know what we were doing, meet with the civic associations, anything else in particular. It was just sort of a general.
I think there was gonna be a special website,
Yeah,
Website, everything.
And they're working on that material.
Yeah, I'm talking about the city commission yesterday. They just sort of
Oh,
wanted
the
to
city
do
commission, yeah.
more outreach kind of thing. So that was the direction. And what we did last time, and I'm glad that we did it, is that I don't wanna throw all the work that we did in the garbage. But I don't think it's right to just pass it on. So what we were gonna do last time, and we didn't because we were waiting for you, was to have Paul start to do a summary of what we did so you could understand it piece by piece and digest it and see if you sort of felt like you were in agreement with what we did.
Okay.
And then my idea would be, we'll do a piece at a time again, so you can digest it, everybody, the new board members can digest it. And then once we get a piece done, pass that along to the city commission. And so that kind of a procedure. So now, let's see, that was 6. 7 is review charter revision board meeting calendar. Great idea. Somebody, we've traditionally met on the first Thursday of each month. And to my understanding, the only thing that's governed by is our own schedules and the availability of rooms and staff to cover the meetings. So I'm opening up the floor to whether that still makes sense. You know, does it work? Do people have a conflict? Or what would be?
I have one comment about it. I mean, generally, boards do not meet in July. Just gonna point that out, and that's.
July 3rd would be.
It'd be very, very bad.
I'll be already partying.
Yes.
So, I mean, that would be the one, because, you know, otherwise, I think it's probably smart to keep it, you know, in its, first Thursday of every month. That way you just kind of know, unless there's a whole bunch of us that can't come to one. You know, we could certainly change that up if.
Does this first Thursday make sense to people? Is that okay? May 1st is a lucky day because it's my birthday. I will be bringing cupcakes. So that's
On May 2nd, so we can celebrate together.
Oh, boy, okay.
So we're gonna that's gonna be quite a big meeting. Everybody can look forward to the cupcakes.
Okay. All right.
October 2nd is Yom Kippur. I don't know if anybody celebrates that, but
I do.
Okay.
I do.
So that's, we have to change that one.
All right, so why don't we do this? Because I have not flipped through my calendar after receiving this. Why don't we do this? On the next agenda, I guess you're keeping, let's everybody for the next meeting.
Right.
Let's call our next meeting for April 3rd.
Right.
And, but everybody look at your calendar when you get home over the next month and see if there's any other things like Daniel brought up or things like that, you know, for some meetings that we need to move. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody will put that on the agenda, sort of review of.
And I'll make sure I have the AV calendar, so I can make sure that we have a room available. But since we know there's a conflict on October 2nd, I'll look for a different day in that month that we.
I was just gonna check mine for April first to make sure. Yeah, okay. Review there. Okay, so this is the first, number 8 is the first substantive portion of our discussion. And Paul, what is the first section you think makes sense to take up? The voting or the land area, or does the the board, some of you have looked at the record that we did before. Does one area seem more urgent than the other, or something that's in, you know?
I was gonna suggest meeting with Ms. Hankerson, did I get that right? Separately to go over what we did last month, which was the public property. If you don't want, unless you want me to go over that again now. I was planning to address Article 3, which is government of city and form of government. Start with, remember, the qualification of members.
So let's not jump over the city property. Are you familiar enough, well, you certainly are not, with what we did last time dealing with city property, because you're just getting it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's put on our agenda for next time that we be prepared to discuss and vote on whether we're ready to move forward with the prior board's recommendations on city property. And send those to the city commission. If we need more time, I'm not rushing anything, but let's just have that as a goal. Paul, you look puzzled.
No, that's fine, but
I can
do
meet.
you wanna meet privately so I can explain it all?
That would be
So
great.
you can give me some, yeah.
Okay,
meet
so
you
on
next
our
time.
agenda for next time will be discussion, and consensus on whether we can take that section, move forward, so you have that section to sort of study for the next meeting, right? So Paul, why don't we take this time to do exactly what you said, which let's give us a preview of the next section, which be the voting and elections. So why don't you start to go through that?
Just where exactly, I remember the presentation, but do I have all of that in the minutes for the property? Was that all,
You mean that stuff, the prior
Yeah.
issues to the land? That's all, if you have the draft report. The draft report is divided into two parts that we did. The first part's a summary, and the second part are the actual charter amendments that we proposed. So you have those in the report. And Paul's very available if you have a question or something during the month to go over.
Yeah, anytime.
So he'll meet with you and so you get up to speed.
what would be helpful to me too also is to see when, like the last charter revisions, when were those made?
Straddling 2017-18. I think it was, I believe it was 17-18.
What were those substantively?
That was when,
It passed in March of 2019, it's changing the terms from 3
Okay.
years to 4
Come on.
years, to changing the elections from November.
I'm just gonna ask, I love you, you know that, but I'm gonna ask you not to do that.
Okay, but
I'm gonna ask you,
to,
if you'd like to be recognized, there's no problem.
Perfect.
Just ask to be recognized, and I'll, I just don't, I have to apply to everybody.
Okay.
Okay, Judy, you have some information on this?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'll give you the whole history. And we spent 2 years, we did the liaison with the Council of Civic Association, we had them attend our meetings, and we came forward and we made the recommendation in October of 2018 to Sorensen, Glassman, Trentalis, Moritas, and McKenzie, who then voted to put it on the ballot March of 2019 to change the election dates from March to November so we could have an inclusive election. Supervisor of elections, yeah, and we had switched from three-year terms to 3 4-year terms so that we can synchronize with the November election. It was multiple reasons. One was for the purpose of voting performance. The other purpose was for cost efficiency. And there were so many changes in the law, they made us more consistent with state law than anything else. We had an issue where the primary election and the March election were inconsistent with state law based on timing and the newer election laws that required the supervisor to have roughly 45 days between the primary and general for the purposes of absentee ballots.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so, to answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Paul, if you could go through the recommendations that we made regarding elections to give us all some background, and then we'll have a month to study it and in addition to the land item.
so these are all under Article 3, which, as I said, is government of city and form of government. And I'll start with 3.03. which was in your report. So the proposal is intended to simplify section 3.03. It eliminates qualification for nomination for a mayor or city commissioner and provides that a candidate shall have resided continuously in the city of Fort Lauderdale as a permanent resident. I'll get into that in a minute, what that means, permanent resident, for at least 6 months immediately preceding the date of qualification, be a United States citizen, which is currently in there, and be an elector of the city at the time of qualification. What that would do is it would effectively reduce the minimum age from 21, which is in there currently, the minimum age to run, from 21 to 18, which would be consistent with the 26th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which reduced the voting age from 21 to 18 in 1971. And it would also be consistent with Article 6, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution. Section 3.0, your proposal also clarifies that a candidate shall not be an officer, employee, or serving in any capacity in city government at the time of filing the candidate oath, except that a city commissioner may qualify election to the office of mayor, and that's currently the case, and that the mayor may qualify for election subject to 3.02. That's term, I believe term limits is there. Yeah, term of commission. And the mayor and the city commissioner shall reside continuously as permanent residents of the city during their term of office. So there was some debate about the terms residence, permanent residence, and domicile, and the board settled on permanent residence, which is tantamount to domicile. Domicile is a more archaic term and it's used for certain legal things, and permanent residence, I guess, is a more modern term, and that's what you settled on. So, as to city commissioner candidates, the board proposed adding language to accommodate qualification in a year in which there has been a redistricting, or as the charter refers to it, reestablishment of city commission districts. The proposal is that a candidate for office of city commission whose permanent residence in the city is in a different city commission district as a result of a reestablishment may seek office as a city commissioner in the district of his or her permanent residence that results from the redistricting. That's about it on 3.03.
Any question, and we can stop, we don't need to, is there any questions about what Paul's?
And I just wanted to point out that in their backup, that strike and underline version can be seen on page 75.
If you want to read the actual charter language. So the way that these are done is basically the existing provisions are struck through and the changes are underlined, so you can know what we've changed.
And the summary is on 69 of 123 for 3.03, and I'm trying to be a little more creative than reading. I'm not reading this.
So what's the definition of permanent resident that we're using here? Because
It's based on some case law from 1933 that I dug up, and it discussed residence, and then it also discussed domicile. There was also some discussion in that opinion, it was Minnick versus Minnick, and there was some discussion of permanent residence also. I can pull it up if you want. And residence, as I recall, isn't necessarily, according to that opinion, isn't necessarily permanent. It's not necessarily a domicile because a person can have multiple residences. So, on the other hand, domicile or permanent residence is where the person intends to return. I don't remember exactly. I can pull up the opinion. I probably have it. But it's more permanent than just a residence. Someone could have multiple residences in different states, in different cities, in different places.
This is something that's litigated a lot.
I know, I just didn't want it to be litigated. If someone's like, someone says like, Richard, you said, I spent 4 months here if someone gets litigated, because I wouldn't want it to cause litigation. That's why I'm not sure if the definition is exact enough? That's the only question I have. I'm not questioning it, I'm just,
No, I'm saying the definition is not exact enough.
Yeah.
The problem is that, and we had a big discussion about maybe we should put in some specific criteria. You have to do this, that, and the other. But if they do everything right, but they don't have a driver's license here, should they be disqualified? So basically, I mean, the cases that I've seen litigated about this, which are a lot, it just comes down to the judge ends up looking at all the circumstances, where they get their, the power bill, where they worship, what, what organizations they belong in, where do they pay taxes, where do they, all that kind of stuff. And so it's subjective. And so there was a lot of discussion, actually the mayor was asking for some specific, check things. But in the end, and you're welcome to discuss this with Paul, but basically if you put one criteria, say if you don't do this, then you're not a permanent resident, that could be very unfair. And you say, well, you own property, well, what about a long-time renter? What about a driver's license? I don't own a driver's license. What about, an electric bill? Well, I don't pay my electric bill, somebody, that kind of thing. So it is an area that's litigated all the time. And we had litigation about this, at the last election. With, I think some claim that Commissioner Herbst was not in his was not in the right district. But it just ends up being litigated, and so we decided to sort of rely on the words that were used in that case. And there's not any real magic to it. It's just it's going to be a sort of totality of circumstances kind of approach we're going to take. If you have an idea of how to be more specific about it, there's no magic to what we did. It's sort of the best we could do, understanding that there's just so many factors.
How are we defining permanent residence, or is that something
That's what Paul was sort of talking about. That's what I was sort of talking about.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So how are we, are we going to be charged with the charge of giving a definition to permanent residence?
That's sort of what I was talking about, which is that the cases that are litigated about this, look at all the circumstances. Where do you live? Where do you pay taxes? Where do you have a driver's license? Where do you worship? Where do you do this and this? And the courts basically look at all the and it's basically where you intend to live permanently. It's a matter of the intent of the person that's running for office. And after looking at a bunch of different possibilities to define this, any one thing, that's what I was saying, like if you just, I don't have a driver's license, well, then you can't, if you list a bunch of things, then if something is missing, then a person could be disqualified that might not necessarily need to be disqualified. So we left it understanding that and you've pointed it out, it's gonna be a matter for the courts to decide. That's all we can say.
But like with the Broward County Property Appraiser's Office, when we claim homestead exemption is everything to what the state law reads is for proper ID. Whether you don't have a driver's license, whether you get a Florida ID, it clearly states where you live. Second is your voter registration, but if you don't vote, fine. Either a utility bill, a water bill, or a gas bill. It has to be that, nothing else.
Well, what if you don't have those things, but you're really, because somebody else pays your...
Then you have a domicile act. Domicile act steps in, and they have to certify a domicile act where they actually live.
Well, we looked into this, right?
It has to be notarized.
Using those definitions?
Yeah, in fact, I found the excerpts from the opinion. So, for example, quoting from another case, any place of abode or dwelling place constitutes a residence, however temporary it may be, while the term domicile relates rather to the legal residence of a person or his home in contemplation of law. As a result, one may be a resident of one jurisdiction although having a domicile in another. So, residence as used in various statutes has been considered synonymous with domicile But of course, this depends upon the intent of the particular statute as ascertained by construction of this provision. Terms are not necessarily synonymous. Generally, where a statute prescribes residence as a qualification for the enjoyment of a privilege or the exercise of a franchise, and whenever the terms are used in connection with subjects of domestic policy, domicile and residence are equivalent. That's probably not a great quote. While the terms domicile and residence are frequently used synonymously, they are not, when accurately used, convertible terms. The former is of more extensive signification and includes, beyond mere physical presence at a particular locality, positive or presumptive proof of an intention to constitute it a permanent abiding place. Residence is of a more temporary character than domicile. Residence simply indicates the place of abode, whether permanent or temporary. Domicile denotes a fixed permanent residence to which, when absent, one has the intention of returning. So, I can read a little more. Residence has a more limited.
Mr. Musk is worth 400.
Yeah, I mean, the way they go.
Has a more limited, precise. Oh, I even had. Okay, we found the one that's highlighted. Residence has a more limited, precise, and local application than domicile, which is used more in reference to personal rights, duties, and obligations. There is a difference in meaning between residence and domicile, is shown by the fact that a person may have his residence in one place while his domicile is in another. So, by the way, you've also added the word continuously, because previously it said the candidate shall have resided in the city of Fort Lauderdale for at least 6 months immediately preceding the date, actually the election. But what you've proposed is that a candidate shall have resided continuously, that's added, in the city of Fort Lauderdale as a permanent resident.
So Paul, obviously this is an issue which we've discussed. Do you think that there's a better answer to this, than the words permanent resident? Do you think that there's a better answer out there that we can? Because 3 of the board members have raised the issue, and you and I are both aware of this issue. It was discussed last time. The question is whether there's a better mousetrap. Is there any better mousetrap than just saying permanent residence?
We could say permanent residence and domicile, and add both.
What does
I guess it would be-
what does that add to it?
As a practical matter, I don't know that it does really change anything, because what I get from this is that they're synonymous. And I think permanent residence is a more modern term. Domicile is more legal.
Do you have how do the cases that talk about permanent residence? Do you have the opinions with you as you would?
Don't think I have anything besides this one. And by the way, I may have mentioned this from 1933, Supreme Court of Florida.
So who would we be limiting between saying a resident for at least 6 months versus a permanent resident for at least 6 months? I'm saying, is there a difference by why you?
I think a resident could be a person who, you could argue, a person who just lives here for 6 months,
Snowbird.
but
Going back
they're
to-
real, but their house and their kids' pictures and everything else are in Canada. Yeah, that's the word permanent.
Could
I can say it's not
conceivably be
perfect,
And
but
that's
it is the best.
when the courts talk about this, they really talk about the intent of the person. What is their intent as manifested by the stuff they've done? So if they've done a lot of things here to have roots in the community and all that sort of indicates an intention to be here permanently. Whereas you could have a house here and live here for 9 months and not be a permanent resident. You could just,
Correct.
like we had a lot of people who came down for COVID, not permanent residents, they were just, so that's why we ended up with this. But again, I wanna say this once and I won't say it, I have no pride of, I'm not being at all defensive about anything that we did. If there's a better way to do something than what we did, great, let's do it. I don't feel bad about it. So Paul, is there another, do you feel like you've gotten to the bottom of what we did, gotten to the bottom of the barrel on this, or is there anything else that we could do other than permanent residence, or you think it's probably the best we can do?
As you've said, if you try to define it and refer to the homestead statute, refer to the driver license statute, you may miss something. So, you could be more specific, but then what if you don't cover everything?
That's where we ended
the
up.
danger.
Well, the other thing was this, on the domicile, someone's statement where they live, and then it's notarized and everything else.
But even if somebody signs a sworn statement,
Right.
that gets challenged. Somebody says, oh yeah, you signed a sworn statement saying I'm a permanent resident of the city of Fort Lauderdale, or my domicile is here,
That you list the address where it's at.
and you put it down. But somebody could say, that's not your address. It's still a fact as to whether that was true or not. That's what happens.
My only concern would be eliminate somebody that we don't wanna eliminate, someone who's like serving the military, someone who is living in North Carolina for 3 months, like that's sort of things I wouldn't necessarily I'm not sure we want to eliminate, so that's the only reason I'm sort of questioning whether this, but maybe it is the best of the world, but I understand we can't be, do you think those would be eliminated if someone lived in North Carolina for 3 months in the summer?
No,
Someone was
because their
serving the
permanent
military?
residence is,
As long as they.
it's their intention.
I'm
Where is
okay
your,
with that.
that's what the courts are gonna look at.
Okay.
I agree with Dan, I think, you start putting specifics in there like that, you could eliminate somebody accidentally.
Okay.
Did we consider making it longer than 6 months?
Paul, did we talk about going longer than 6 months?
I don't think that was discussed.
Yeah.
I don't think that was discussed.
Would you
It's
guys,
an interesting topic.
would you like to discuss it? It's open. Could be a fresh recommendation, so nothing's off the board.
I'd have to also research, there's case law on waiting periods for benefits and privileges. And I don't know to what extent that case law might apply here.
So why don't you check that and so that doesn't stop the discussion. So is the board interested
But
in?
could you, what do you mean benefits and?
Like for, maybe food assistance, state food assistance, for
Oh.
licensure, for certain
No.
benefits and privileges. There's case law that if someone is starving, there can't be a waiting period to get the
Right.
to get the food assistance. There's case law on that.
Would that affect this?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
That's what I asked him, Mary, but sometimes there's case law that says that you can't put these overly burdensome requirements on people's privileges. And a person's privilege is running for office.
Okay.
So that's why I asked Paul to check to see whether that would affect this.
I understand.
And so he's gonna check that.
Okay.
Putting that aside for a moment,
Okay.
is there some thought that the 6 months is not enough?
I think it should be longer. I probably am in the minority, but, I think sometimes, well, I don't wanna get into anything specific, but my feeling is that if you're gonna run for one of these major offices and you're only in the city for 6 months, I don't think it's adequate. That's my opinion, that's just my thought, but I probably am I don't know if anybody else feels that way, you can have a situation where somebody lives in District 2 and and they've lived there for years and they all of a sudden realize there's gonna be an opening in District 4. And they move to District 4 where they know nothing about it compared to other people because they only have to be there for 6 months. So, and these things do happen.
And ours, Paul, says that you have to not only be a permanent resident, but you have to live in your district, right? For 6 months,
Commissioner.
for 6 months, the commission district for 6 months, unless there's that weird thing which we don't need. Which we put in for redistricting, just to cover it, but basically you have to live in your district for 6 months.
Yeah.
Hey, Dean, Michael, Dan?
think about it, I mean, to me, it sounds like I would be more someone moving from out of state here from, you know, and not only being here for 6 months and really not really knowing the community versus moving one block away and not knowing the district wouldn't concern me as much, honestly, but
I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah.
You know, this is our first swipe at this. This is just a sort of an orientation to these sections. So think about it to the letter. It's something that we want to maybe look at again. And you know, and we'll discuss it next time. I do have a question for a procedural question. In terms of, Paul told me that there's hands being raised behind my back. And the question is, members of the public are gonna come. What is the board's feeling as to whether public comment should come at the end, whether they should be part of the discussion that we're having? I'm happy to handle it any way that you want to.
Because I was recently part of the public. I know from time to time, I did like this, I just didn't understand what he had said. You know, every once in a while, there was some clarification. I don't have a problem with somebody raising their hand saying, I don't have a question.
Right. The question is whether we should, if somebody has something that they want to contribute during the discussion, should I be?
I think you should allow them, because if it's fresh in your mind
Yeah.
at the time of the discussion,
Okay.
it gives more quality to it,
Okay.
rather than
So you guys
wait
need to
till
move
the
that way so that I know that you have your hands raised.
Okay, the only thing I wanted to advise you of,
Yeah.
we did this in 2023 as well. Session has now started. There are a lot of legislative bills dealing with elections. So the last time we deferred the elections section until we knew what Tallahassee's outcome was, so we didn't spin on wheels addressing issues that we may be circumvented by state law.
Okay, but if you guys want to get called on, we're gonna call on you as part of the discussion. I'm happy to do that, but you gotta be, I can't see you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be our procedure unless it becomes.
Well, eventually, you'll be sitting here. Yes.
Yeah, you should be sitting there.
You actually should be sitting here.
Okay, all right. Can we get a special chair?
Be fresh.
I'll get you a special chair.
And be ready to go. I
Uh,
don't wanna hear the point.
Okay, Paul, go ahead.
Okay, ready? Next section is 3.04, which is Judge of Elections and Qualifications of Members. I'll tell you what the charter says currently.
Okay, let me just
First.
stop for a second. This is, the background of this was, there was a big to-do at the last election as to whether somebody was qualified, not qualified, should we seat the members, should we not seat the members? Somebody was sworn in one way, somebody was, and it was not, it needed to be clarified. So that's why we addressed this.
Alright, currently the city commission is the judge of all municipal elections and referenda and of the qualifications of its members, subject to review by the court. At the time that the city commission meets to canvass the results of any election, any registered elector of City of Fort
Well,
Lauderdale.
what do you read, what are you telling us right now? Is this what we
This
proposed,
is
or is this?
this is currently what it says.
Okay.
What you propose is repealing this.
Okay.
So let me just tell you what, so at the time that the city commission meets to canvass the results of any election, which really is moot, as everyone knows, because the supervisor of elections does that now. So this is a bit archaic. At the time that the city commission meets to canvass the results of any election, any registered elector of City of Fort Lauderdale shall be entitled to file with the city commission an affidavit setting out the facts showing that a candidate has violated the provisions of this charter as to the manner of his or her election, or is otherwise unqualified to hold office, and the city commission shall take proof at such meeting and declare the results. Actually, I said the supervisor, I believe it's the canvassing board that does the canvassing. So that's what you have that's what we have currently.
We had this at the last election where we had some member of the public filed an affidavit that created a process and a procedure that that we thought needed to be looked at.
Delayed the percent, the whole
Yes.
swearing in, yeah.
So the board's, your recommendation is to repeal the section because pursuant to section 7 of this, I'll call it the special act. It's chapter 2012-253. There's a special act that applies to municipal elections in Broward County. So according to section 7 of that special act of the legislature, the Broward County Canvassing Board canvasses all municipal elections of Broward County, and there are judicial remedies for the potential challenges that are described in that section. So your recommendation was to repeal it outright.
To keep the city commission out of that business, not put them in that position, and let somebody challenge it in court. Judy?
We have from the county attorney's office, who would be serving as the attorneys for the SOE, come and present as well. Brought forward the special act that governs over elections that our charter was inconsistent with the state law that governed it. And that's where we cleared up the language because it does cite that within 14 days of the canvassing board, our officers must be sworn in. So everything that the city had on record was inconsistent with state law. And therefore, it was helpful having, and you may want to do that at some point, having the county attorney's office that govern that elections sit and just fill you all in and educate you better.
Yeah, I'd like to see a copy of this, like, how is it inconsistent? It's not, it seems like it's common that they, the House of Representatives is a judge there too, so like, why are we repealing this entirely? Like, we're replacing it.
Put it,
So you're just saying, so now we're silent on it and we're gonna let the courts decide?
exactly, because it just is, it turns the city commission into a judge and jury of its members. And this is my own personal feeling, I think it's super awkward. I think that these things end up in court anyway, and that the courts are suited to hearing evidence and making a decision as to whether a person is qualified or not qualified. And for me, it keeps any kind of politics out of it. And so that's why I thought that this was a good way to handle it, as opposed to, because I've been involved in these little trials where city commissions holding a trial to determine whether a candidate is qualified. I mean, it turns into a mess. So that's what we did. But Paul, would you get Daniel a copy of the special act so he has it? So you
Sure, we're looking for it.
I'm going to give it right now.
I'm not sure it reduces the kangaroo, like, then the people just show up anyway, right? So who's determining then when they're seating, so you'd have to go to court, get an injunction, yeah.
Exactly.
But you still have the kangaroo aspect of it regardless, like, if.
The court is the kangaroo, not the commission.
Yeah.
But you also have litigation that costs. And if a poor community want to bring up issues that may be affecting them and they can't afford to go to court, then they are kind of stuck with not having a voice. So how do people who don't necessarily have money to litigate get their voices heard in the city?
So in this context though, so it would be it's somebody who's challenging the qualifications of a candidate, that's what it is. So that's the question is how, if they can't afford to go to court, how do they enforce their rights? And you're suggesting that maybe they should have a less expensive way to enforce
Other than just the courts, they should have a way to be able to work something out within the city without having to spend money to get there, or possibly then end up, your voice gets silenced because you don't have the financial means in order to fight.
Mr. Chair, in the courts, there's a mechanism that is called informa pauperis. So there's a way to do an affidavit for people who cannot afford the filing fee. And there's a way to do it informa pauperis, I believe is the term. And with an affidavit, I don't know to what extent some or all fees can be waived. I'm not that familiar with it.
Well, I'm just saying, whatever the option, it needs to be put so that communities of people who may not otherwise have the ability to just, if they go to court, then they need to have some way to say, I object to this, so what is my way of being able to get my voice heard? So I'm just
As I
saying,
said, there's a way to get
the
those
public
fees,
so they
those
know.
fees waived.
You know, it's really a bigger issue. I don't know the answer to it, which is, okay, so the city commission passes an ordinance that affects a poor community and they don't like it.
Right.
Okay. And the process of challenging that, there is one in the charter, which is citizens referendums and all of it. It's expensive and it requires a lot. I mean, the issue you're raising is not limited to qualifications of members. It's any time the city does something that people don't like and they don't have the means or the know-how to challenge it. It's really a bigger issue that you're raising. I don't know the answer to it.
It could be, but in this case, is if there's a candidate
Yes.
that's there, and whatever it is that may be wrong with the candidate, then the persons or person should have the ability with the facts to support it, to be able to say, I want to exercise my right as a citizen in the city of Fort Lauderdale.
So we'll talk about this, we'll think about what people have said and see whether there's some changes we want to make to the prior recommendation. Okay, keep going, Paul.
Next is,
Why don't you see, I don't know of any of the charters that I've seen, but there's something in between. Whether there's, I hear what Nadine is saying, there's something in between, I don't know. I don't know of anything, otherwise I would tell you. But I don't know of anything between and the way that where we came down was just having the city commission try to be a judge and jury and turned into a big mess. Yeah. So that's, maybe there's something.
Yeah.
there is, because I did a survey of sections, I may be able to find it if you give me a minute later, but
Well, I want to do an overview of where we were, and then the next time people have a chance to review all this stuff and bring it back next time.
because some charters have what we have, some are different. I remember seeing that.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So, ready to the next one?
Well, if there's examples of what other people are doing, then I include it in the next agenda. Don't bring, because we want to be able to look at it ahead of time.
I have it.
Okay, great. So you'll include it in the next agenda as part of an attachment, next agenda.
Next is 3.05, designation of vice mayor. So currently, the vice mayor is designated at the first city commission meeting in April, which it seems was based on March elections. The board proposes that the city commission designate the vice mayor at the first regular city commission meeting after certification of the election results of a regular municipal election, and at the first regular meeting in November every year thereafter until the next regular municipal election. In addition, in the event during the period between regular municipal elections, the vice mayor leaves office and a new district commissioner takes office, at the first regular meeting after this, what you've called the substitute commissioner takes office, the city commission shall by resolution designate a district commissioner as the vice mayor. 3.08, any discussion or question on that? Okay, 3.08 is forfeiture of office. The board recommends deleting the sentence that provides for forfeiture of office in the event of a conviction for a felony in light of and recognizing the existing governor's statutory authority to suspend and remove municipal officers. There was a lot of discussion on that, as you recall. Currently,
This goes back to the same thing, which is
state
goes
law.
into a court, and the commission becomes a court, and it's the same sort of issue that we were discussing with respect to qualification for people running for office.
And so currently, any member of the city commission who shall, while in office, be convicted of a felony, shall thereupon forfeit his or her office, notwithstanding any appeal or right of appeal he or she may take or have subsequent to such conviction. So I guess the big problem there is who decides? How is that decided? Who tells the person that the office is forfeited? Operationally, how is that done?
And recently, the governor's office has been very active when this kind of stuff happens, of either suspending the person or terminating the person, so that's, we just defer to them.
Ready for the next one? 3.09, organizational meeting. The board recommends that the organizational meeting of the city commission following a municipal election, and that is regular or special. We're combining, we'll get to it in a minute, but we're combining 3.09 and 3.10. So either regular or special, at which those elected officers take office, at which those elected take office, be on the date of the first regular city commission meeting after the certification of election results by the Broward County Canvassing Board. And I will get into meetings in a minute. There's another section, 3.13, about regular meetings. So
This is also an issue around election time, when the person took office and who was getting seated and all of that.
So it's on the date of the first regular city commission meeting after certification of the results.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear how it's changing from, so it's, before it was the first regular meeting in December, following, okay.
Yeah, let me look at that for a second.
So it's the first
Currently, it's the
I-
first regular meeting day in December, following each regular election. The existing city commission meets at the usual place for holding meetings for the purpose of transacting any business before assumption of office by the newly elected officials, and they take office at 11 o'clock a.m. The newly elected city commissioner shall assume the duties of office. I'm reading through the underline and cross out.
Basically, not holding off until December in case there's a November date right after the election.
Yeah, it's on the first regular meeting day in December following the regular election. And then the new elected commissioners take office at 11 a.m. We took out, or you took out the actual time of day. The 11 o'clock a.m. is crossed out. 3.10 is special meeting to seat a new member. And what it says now is that on the first Tuesday following the election of a new member elected at other than a regular or every quadrennial election, the commission meets to receive, uses the word receive, such a new member. What you have proposed is that 3.10 be repealed because if 3.09 is approved, 3.10 for special election will be superfluous.
Let's use the word they instead of you. This group hasn't approved anything. They.
With the board. Ready for 3.13? This section was redrafted to incorporate provisions already contained in an ordinance, section 2-26 of the Code of Ordinances. It already exists regarding meetings. The board incorporated some of those provisions that are already in existence. For example, the board recommends amending section 3.13 to provide for the holding of city commission meetings on the first and third Tuesdays of each month or on the succeeding Wednesday in the event of a legal holiday. Rescheduling meeting dates, calling special meetings by resolution, the agenda to be established by the city manager. That's something that was in the ordinance, it wasn't in the charter, it's not in the charter currently. And to provide for the city commission by ordinance to prescribe rules of parliamentary procedure. And also, there's a lot of discussion about this, to identify a parliamentarian. Ready for the next one? Next one is.
Daniel has a question.
Sorry.
I mean, should they be able to determine when their meetings are? I mean, are we forcing them to have the meetings when we say they are? I mean, is that prudent?
The way it was expressed to me was that this is the way that there needs to be some predictability about the city commission meetings, that the public needs to know that the city commission meetings on a certain date, and that if it's in the charter, the commission can change it if they want to, if they have to. But basically, there's the concept here was that there was some predictability on behalf of the public, knowing, okay, I go to city commission meetings, they're on this day, and that's just the way they are. As opposed to the city commission adjusting days all, each time.
Or changing the ordinance more easily.
Or changing the ordinance more easily. That was the thought. No magic to it, but that was just the thought. And also, we tried to stay a little bit with tradition because this is the way that, I hate these words, but this is the way it's been done. I hate those words. But
Whether it's been done on
this schedule is the one that's.
Yeah, but putting in the charter seems like, and again, we're gonna get these things done, the ones that are important. I feel like sometimes we're micromanaging, like why, if there's no need to have this in the charter. I find it hard to believe it's in other charters that they say it's the first and third Tuesdays. Some do.
Some do.
Like it's telling the Congress that they meet on every Monday. You wouldn't be in the Constitution. But I think we should try to focus on the things that are really important. But that's just one thing I'm just struggling with.
I think that there was also, Paul or Anthony, Judy, somebody may have a thought. There was also some thought that at the last time that there was some flexibility regarding these commission meetings and whether they were gonna hold a commission meeting to swear somebody in. And I think part of this was, you have to, there's gonna be regular commission meetings and that's when people get sworn in. Because last time, am I remembering this wrong? Judy?
With the swearing in?
Yes, that there was some.
The city's ordinance was inconsistent with state law as far as seating commission. It was very clear. With the meetings here, what we discussed was the flexibility, like you said, special things that come up that you may have to cancel a meeting, or we being too restrictive. We also then had the conversation about what's the differences of regular meeting versus the conference meeting in the afternoon. So Richard, how many of the cities that you've written put in the charter versus not?
I couldn't tell you. So I know some do and some don't.
I know I have it. Deerfield right now has it. Weston, I think, has it. Miramar probably hasn't.
Daniel, I think I understand your point, which is, how much do you want to put in here and how much not? But I felt like, am I remembering this wrong, Anthony? That there
I'm
was
trying to look at my notes and see.
there was a discussion, there was at the last election, there was at the last election, people weren't showing up and there was no quorum, so they couldn't swear a person in.
No. That's incorrect. 2022.
Judy, I'm gonna ask you, you're not a member of the board, please. I wanna hear what you have to say. Raise your hand and I'll call on you. Do you have something to say? Okay, good. Go ahead.
What happened in November of 2022, when they wanted to swear them in, they played games. And they tried to say you couldn't do it before December, which was inconsistent with state law. What we did was judges issued the oath. They then said, the city manager said and this was a debatable issue, and Paul, I think you and I had that conversation. What was the majority? There were only 2 members left on the commission. So those 2 members said that they would not be available on any dates that the commissioners wanted to be available. So since the
So they were, this was put in, I'm remembering this correctly, we thought, there was some thought that by putting the dates there, that's when the meetings were.
Right.
Correct. So and there couldn't be any.
There's also that, and there are a lot of people that go to these meetings on a regular basis. And so they kind of know, let's not have a doctor's appointment. I mean, it sounds really stupid, but I mean,
No, they should have a regular agenda, but I'm not sure it should be in the charter, and there's certain things in this charter, like too, like this reasonable backup for, I don't wanna jump around, like that's an invitation for like a lawsuit too, to me, like every time we're gonna have somebody 3 days prior, reasonable backup, is that really in the normal charter?
Yes, because what happens is that things get put onto an agenda. It's in some charters, because what happens is, depending upon the politics, an item gets put on the agenda, there's no backup, it gets thrown out at the last minute, people don't have a chance to get to, and it gets shoved through. And these are safeguards to make sure that things don't just get thrown on an agenda, no backup, no warning, and so, like for instance, in the Dade County Commission, there's a 3-day rule, and a 5-day rule. If the stuff is not in the hands of the commissioners 3 days beforehand, then any commissioner can remove it from the agenda. And so this was a protection to make sure that didn't happen.
And it uses that language, reasonable backup material?
Yes. You know what, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but there has to be reasonable backup material.
3 days before, here's a 200-page document,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know exactly, Dana, I don't know exactly what it says, but I know there needs to be, the item needs to be presented. And again, I don't think there's litigation over that. Commissioner could say, I need more backup, but let's think about it for next time and we'll talk about it. Okay, Paul.
Also, I wanted to point out that one thing that is not in this proposal is the 1:30 PM that is in the ordinance. That's something that the board at the time didn't want to include in the rewrite. So you might wanna revisit that, or not.
Okay, so that's because they have a tradition of having basically a meeting and then they have a conference meeting, right?
So it's actually one meeting.
Yeah.
It begins at 1:30. What divides it between what's called the conference meeting or the conference agenda and the regular meeting is provision that says ordinances, resolutions, and something else, and motions shall be heard after 6 PM. So that's why it seems divided, but it's actually one meeting that begins at 1:30 according to the ordinance.
And that 6 o'clock was put in so that important members of the public could be off of work to hear those items. But here's the situation, where we didn't put some detail in regarding this 1:30 meeting because of what you're talking about.
So the actual action, people are more available in the evening. And also some land use matters have to be after 5.
After 5.
So that was left in there. You'll see in the second paragraph. Public hearings, ordinances, resolutions, and motions shall be heard after 6. The next one, are you ready for the next one? Next one is initiative and referendum. This is a bit of a long one. It's kind of involved, so bear with me here. The proposal for section
Let me explain the difference between an initiative and a referendum just to start off.
Okay, we're going through, well, I will, I have it here. So, an initiative is a move by the citizens to pass a new ordinance. Referendum, the way it's used here, is used to mean a move by the citizens to repeal an existing ordinance.
So it's a non-judicial remedy to get something either onto the books or off the books, yeah.
And the proposal for 3.15 actually would replace sections 3.15 through 3.20.
It's a very, you need to read through it, it's a very complicated procedure with days and certifications and review by the city attorney's office, it's pages and pages. I'm not sure that if people will get it to just if you grind through it, I mean, if you guys wanna hear it, it's fine, but I think you're probably better off just to read it. And
I was gonna go into a little, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, obviously, I was gonna try to describe what the current system is and what the proposal is to change it.
okay, that's a good idea.
Can I do that? So currently, to propose a new ordinance or to repeal or amend the code of ordinances, the process is as follows. A committee of not less than 1,000 electors of the city prepares and signs a petition addressed to the city commission requesting that a proposed ordinance that has to be attached to the petition be enacted. One member of the committee is designated as the chairman, and the committee has the right to request that the city attorney assist in the drafting of the proposed ordinance in proper form, and if it does, the city attorney has 30 days within which to draft the proposed ordinance and append to the draft form of ordinance an opinion as to the legality of the proposed ordinance. The committee then provides 60 days prior notice to the city manager that the petition and proposed ordinance will be presented to the city commission at a regular meeting. Proponents and opponents of the proposed ordinance are given an opportunity to be heard. At that meeting, the city commission may reject the proposal, fail to take action on it, or pass it on first reading in prepared form or pass it in an amended form. If passed, the committee chairman then states in an open meeting whether the committee accepts or rejects the ordinance. If accepted, it is placed on first reading. There's a little conflict here, redundancy actually. If accepted, it is placed on first reading at such meeting, which, as I said, already happened, but okay. And then second reading at the next regular meeting, which, by the way, may be too soon for advertising. That may not work the way it is currently, because it has to be advertised at least 10 days before passage of an ordinance and to get it to the press, and they need lead time, so that actually may not be enough time. Then, if the city commission rejects, fails to take action, passes the ordinance in an amended form not acceptable to the committee, or delays passage of the ordinance, the chairman of the committee may demand in writing that an election be held, and then the city commission shall take action either calling the election or refusing to call such election. After a demand for election has been refused, the committee has the right to circulate petitions to obtain the signatures of 15% of the qualified electors to compel enactment of the ordinance, and there's a procedure for gathering the signatures in section 3.16, which I'll spare you. The whole procedure is there. If the clerk's certificate shows that 15% of the registered electors signed the petition, then, and I'll quote here, it shall be the mandatory duty of the city commission to enact the ordinance in final form or call an election for the purpose of submitting such proposed ordinance to the votes of the electorate. Actually, I left a little out in the quote, but so 3.18 currently addresses the time of holding the election. 3.19 describes the ballots to be used. 3.20 addresses referendum elections for repealing or amending ordinances and any intent, this is interesting, and any intended sale or lease of public property when submitted to a referendum by the city commission on its own motion or as a result of the initiative proceedings. And you might want to separate out sale or lease of public property. Consider this and leave a section for that kind of referendum if your recommendations for Article 8 that we discussed last time are adopted. Because some of the recommendations in Article, there was one or more articles in provisions in Article 8
That require.
that required a referendum, so you might wanna leave some of 3.20 for that. Now the board's proposal. It separates, as I mentioned, it separates the process for what I would call a special election between initiative, which is the power to propose ordinances, and referendum, which is the power to require reconsideration by the city commission of any adopted ordinance. The initiative process excludes, as proposed, budgeting, salaries, taxes, and zoning. I'm simplifying it a little. Referendum excludes ordinances, levying, taxes, and zoning. You may want to consider adding exclusions, and I say that primarily because the pay plan is done by ordinance, and I wouldn't think anyone would want it to be subject to reconsideration by referendum. So, although it's not in the code, it is done by ordinance, albeit not codified, and so that's something that it seems should be excluded from
Let me make
referendum.
a suggestion. If there are things that have come up since the recommendations were made, Paul, that you think if we decide to go forward with them, that we should add them in, I'd ask you to hold those, because it's too complicated. It's complicated enough for them to understand what the prior board did without adding things onto it. You follow what I'm saying? Yeah. So if there's things that, maybe improvements on what we did before, keep them, and just, your presentation should just be dealing with what the prior board did, and just so that they can sort of get up to speed.
Proceedings may be commenced by a minimum of 10 electors who file an affidavit with the city clerk stating that they will constitute the petitioner's committee, rather than the current requirement of a committee of not less than 1,000 electors to initiate the process. The committee submits its proposed ordinance or the citation of the ordinance, together with a proposed petition on a form provided by the city to the city attorney. City attorney would have 30 days from receipt to find that the proposed ordinance and petition are legally sufficient or insufficient. The committee then has 30 days to resubmit the proposal in response to a finding of legal insufficiency. Petitions must be signed by at least 1% of the total number of electors registered to vote at the last regular city election. The next step is that the signed petitions are submitted to the supervisor of elections for verification. The committee is the one that pays the Broward County Supervisor of Elections the cost of signature verification that is established by the supervisor. There is a procedure for supplementing signatures within 15 days from the date of the supervisor's certificate in the event the petition is certified insufficient because it lacks the required number of signatures. Number of compliant signatures. Unfortunately, I found a little typo in what we proposed before, and it sort of says complaints signatures, but I fixed that. Oops. Upon receipt, actually I found a couple of other typos I fixed.
Make a note.
Got it.
Just keep going.
Upon receipt of a certificate issued by the supervisor of elections that the petition is sufficient, the city commission considers the petition. If the city commission fails to adopt the proposed initiative ordinance without any change in substance within 45 days, or fails to repeal the referred ordinance within 30 days, the proposed or referred ordinance is submitted to the electors. The vote of the electorate is held in conjunction with the city's next regular municipal election, unless the committee elects an earlier vote of the electorate, either in conjunction with an earlier available Broward County election or by mail ballot election, provided that the committee is the one that shall prepay the cost of a vote of the electorate that is held earlier than the city's next regular municipal election. If a majority of the qualified electors voting on a proposed initiative ordinance vote in favor of it, it is considered adopted upon certification of the election results. If a majority of the qualified electors voting on a referred ordinance vote for its repeal, it is considered repeal upon certification of the election results. And that concludes my
That's a lot.
It's
a lot.
This
This is really a lot. So what we're gonna do, what I'd like to do next time is to start going through the land use items, the property ones we did one by one, very slowly. Give and discuss each one, get input from the public on each one, and see if we can. I don't feel like in a rush to do anything, I just wanna get it right. And so we'll spend as much time discussing the stuff as we need to make sure we get it right. If we need more information, the staff will get it for us. And we'll just try to get it right. So for next time, we're gonna be prepared, we're gonna try to read through the property items and be ready, we're gonna go one by one and see if we can make some headway. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't feel compelled to get through all of them. If we only get through one or two of the property items, that's okay. How much time do you think we should spend at these meetings? When do you get burnt? You get burnt out after a certain amount of time.
2 hours max.
Max.
Max. 2 hours max, right?
I'm not at work all day, so
Yeah.
2 hours max.
I can imagine.
I'm going back to work.
Yeah.
It's 7:06 right now, so start the meeting at 5:30.
Jim, do you have comments, anything?
No, in terms of the length of the meeting, I think you get to an hour and a half.
You said just in general, because you.
Saturation. I'm really glad that Paul's going, and you're going through all these older things that we've already covered for the benefit of the new board members. I think it's really important. I'll be interested to see if there's any changes that you make based on kind of starting over again a little bit and making recommendations to the commission.
And Judy, I really do appreciate your input. Yeah. Really do, I do appreciate your input. I just want to, I have to treat you just like any other member of the public, and so that's why I'm being a little bit picky. Would you?
Well, I would just suggest, because it was 2 years worth of work that they're trying to educate you in one night,
Yes.
which is unfair.
And while I might be good at some
And
things,
you're more than capable. So take it the way we did, where we did one section,
Right.
one meeting, the next section, the next meeting. And understand that we never addressed a section and made the change that night. We would send it back and bring it back and bring it, and Richard worked diligently for 2 years with the attorney's office, doing all the agenda prep and making sure that all the comments would consistently come back. And again, we did do a training session with the county attorney's office and the inspector general because of some of the issues with the ethics that we saw and the questions that came up, as well as the county attorney's office on the election law, so that we could clarify that and have that as a base start. And then we did the presentation after session's over to see what changes so that you're not spinning wheels again as to what may be changing in Tallahassee.
Anthony, do you feel like because one of the commissioners did refer to their list of things that they wanted us to consider. Do you have any kind of feeling that they would want us to deal with some of their list before we deal with some of these other things? Or you think they're okay with?
I think they're okay as long as you get to them,
Yeah.
because I think the overall conversation was how you're gonna group them anyway when you get to the
Okay.
point of putting them on the ballot, so I
Okay.
don't know that you would get everything on that same ballot.
And the other question I have, just sort of selfishly, is we've been getting these agendas electronically. I know that at least Daniel and I have been printing them out.
I printed it out. I learned my lesson
So
last
I'm
one.
gonna ask staff, Anthony, to send us hard copies of these agendas. I don't think everybody should have to print them.
Well, I was thinking that, I was looking at their computers, I go, I could have brought my laptop and looked at it.
Yeah, I can't do that very well.
Okay, that's
Printing
fine.
it out is, I mean, for me, I think
that's fine.
Daniel too, and I don't know about you.
paper.
Paper, okay, so we're gonna ask you to either have delivered or mailed to us the agendas and all the backup, and then also have it available electronically for members of the public.
Yeah, I printed it out and then my printer kind of.
Yeah, we all
messed it
did
up as
that, and
things
so
came out.
it's, you know, like, all through, I mean, if I go to the office, it gets printed really fast, but if I do it,
It's 235 pages.
It's a lot of moving.
anything else from the board before, I think we're,
I like the idea of doing it section by section,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
makes sense to me. I don't know that, I felt sometimes when I was just, watching it, we kind of skipped around a bit.
what we did was we had we had a section dealing with old business. So we dealt with the
Okay.
business from the prior meeting, changes that we had made, and then we went on to new business, which were
Right.
new sections. And so that's where it may have been.
Mhm.
But I'm happy to go as slow as we want. I'm anxious to see the deadline that we're on, David.
So that's what I was, raised my hand for. If they're based off what we did in 2024, it's due on the first day of qualifying before the primary, which would be June 8th, 2026. That's where you have to provide them in paper, or a digital with the exact wording translated, and you have to provide them a copy of an ordinance, which is gonna require 2 readings.
Okay, so when do you think, so what we need to know is when we need to get listen, we're gonna be sending sections to the city commission. They could start doing that immediately, right? Getting into final form, getting it translated if they adopt it, right?
If they did it in multiple ordinances, yeah, they could start doing, and then I guess it comes down to also how many questions.
There was a timeline, David, that we put together based on some
I
of
did
those
that
factors.
for the last one, I'm doing the same thing this time,
Update it.
I'll have it, I'll
So
send
you
it to the entire board next week, and then,
Do you think we're looking basically at a year?
yeah.
Judy, you have a comment?
Well, I was going to say, what we also had was, if it's on the November ballot, we actually had up till July or August.
So they gave me, we requested if an extension was available. They said yes, but I can't operate on the last time, and I don't think they're gonna agree to a extension now. So I don't wanna base a deadline that we're not sure if they'll extend it to August, unless they tell us ahead of time. I'll ask the question.
Yeah,
But-
because the question is because they can't print the November
Right,
ballot
until primaries
until
and
the
everything.
primary election,
Right.
August,
Mhm.
and that was what we went to them for.
Okay, so
Which
David,
they
when do you
agreed.
think that we would, so obviously they don't wanna get our last recommendation the day before the deadline, the city commission. So they're gonna,
Before.
I know, but that's not
May.
right, that's not.
Yeah.
May.
So when do you think that we would have to have our last recommendation to them?
Let me contact them, I'm gonna wait until actually,
I'm talking about the city commission.
the city commission.
When do you think we'd have to have our last recommendation to them?
So the public vote,
Yeah, so
that was the whole thing.
we're gonna have to have it at least,
April, May was what we.
yeah,
went
April,
with.
May, because they're gonna have to, if they are agreeable to it, then gotta have the readings of the
Right, so we
ordinance.
have April first, Michael, did you wanna say something?
No, that was the whole, one of the questions that was before this meeting was informing the public.
Yes.
Exactly. All these referendums. Because the public was not informed. In a proper way.
Okay, so what is the status of, like, for instance, I think if we had our public relations person here, we would tell people that we're gonna discuss items relating to city land ownership at our next meeting, so how do we do that?
I can get with Ashley tomorrow and talk to her about it. I think they were, I apologize, I wasn't able to be at the last meeting, but from my understanding, she was trying to put some material together for your consideration on like actual verbiage.
Okay, well, we'd like to see it next time,
Okay.
if you could.
Yeah, I think she's already prepared to do that. We were meeting with her this morning and she said she was gonna.
So I think what you should be doing is pushing out, like if we're gonna discuss this topic at the meeting, that's what she should be pushing out, so people in the public that are interested in that topic could come.
Yep.
So I just wanna be clear in my head, as we get through, like, let's say, like some sections are more complex than others, I understand that, but several sections and we're comfortable with, our verbiage, our words, are we gonna take this to the public before the commission? That
They
kind of,
use the word simultaneous.
simultaneously, I think
That's
it's
what they,
that.
that's what they had used at the
Okay.
meeting. So I would think we have our first section.
Yeah.
I mean, they did say that was the word
They
one of
did
the
say that
commissioners
at the
used.
same time.
They said something,
I mean, it
so
makes sense because you're trying to get elicit some feedback, right?
so maybe what we would do is when we have our first section, let's say dealing with land, we would go, first of all, we would tell the public we're gonna discuss it at this meeting. And then when we have our first section, we would then have, what's her name, Ashley? Ashley, push it out to the public and, you know,
That's good, let's try one section and see how it goes, just
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah,
a little
see how that
experiment.
Test this, yeah.
and I think also maybe in our first report to the city commission, we could include our outreach efforts and see if they're satisfied with that.
Okay, I think that's a great idea, I just do one, just to
Yeah,
see.
just do one, see how it goes. Okay.
And I think too, for, 2026, that, I think we should be shooting for April.
I agree. Yeah. April 2026, we got a lot to do. Yes, Jim.
Is it the intent of the board this time to revisit all of the sections that were done in the past and not go any further so that, I think we stopped with section 8.
Yeah.
Just complete that again, do the public outreach and then present that?
I think we have to sort of see how it goes. My intention always was to go through the entire charter. That's what Judy and I had always wanted to do. But we'll have to see how it goes. So we'll have to see how long it takes us to sort of grind through these sections. And it could take meeting more than once a month, if it's going too slowly. Or we could say to the city commission, listen, we've gone through these sections, this is what it's taking us. We don't have so much time left. What do you want us to deal with? And let them say, should we go back to my list and deal with strong mayor or whatever the other things they had on their list?
How much time would you think would be devoted to going back over what was already agreed upon?
As much as the board wants to do. I don't, we have four new board members.
But I was around.
Mary was, but I mean, they gotta feel comfortable.
Sure.
Before we make a recommendation to the city commission, everybody's gotta feel comfortable about it, And so however it takes, yes, Judy.
Another recommendation is what I always did, based on the person that appointed me, to take the information after the meeting and attend the next pre-agenda meeting that district commissioner and keep them in the loop. So whoever appoints you, if you keep the pre-agenda meetings and utilize that as a way to communicate with that district so that they know what's going on.
I just update my commissioner from time to time by phone. I don't go to their pre-agenda meetings. But everybody's free to do whatever they want to do. But we have a lot, there's a lot. Yes.
There are 3 sections that are very significant that we haven't gone over. And those are civil service system, Article 6, elections, Article 7, and annual budget, Article 9. So there's a lot of it.
I'm very focused on the ones that are on the city commission's list. I'm not getting spanked again. We're gonna deal with the items, my plan is to deal with the items that we've already sort of touched on and then go to their list because that's what they've asked us to do. And
There's also all the cleanup items, right? They're like the list from the city attorney. Do we have that?
Can I have that list, or do we have that list?
you should have it already. I think it was, I thought that Anthony supplied a report that compiled what we had done plus the commissioner's list. Didn't you give that?
Where was that list?
Mr. Chair,
If Judy didn't give it
Yes.
to you, I'll make sure.
moving forward, so
Maybe resubmit
Dr.
it.
Hankinson, myself, and everybody else can have it.
Yes, I thought you all had it.
I don't think I saw it.
No,
I thought that it was, I told the commission, I thought it was included, Anthony did a report, which I thought you had been supplied with. If you have it, I'm sorry. But I thought that Anthony at the first meeting did his report. Remember that?
Yeah, but I'll make sure we send it back out.
Okay, send it back
It got missed.
But that included all the commissioner's recommendations. Okay, anything else?
Richard, one last thing. You also recommended lots of pages can be cut out of the charter by taking out all that legal in the beginning. Because one of Richard's goals was to reduce the number of pages of the charter.
We'll get to, those are cleanup items, but I wanna get to these substantive items and then we'll see how much time we have.
And just for awareness, there have been some requests from staff on some provisions in the charter they'd like you to take a look at. They were kind of minor things, so I think we could kind of lump them together into one discussion, but without diving into them.
Yeah, I thought that you had been supplied with Anthony's summary. I thought he did a full summary.
I think I have that, but.
I didn't,
Maybe
was
it's
it, was
a
it,
while
was it in the last, I mean, I have the minutes from
Maybe
last
in-
time or this time, I don't see it in either one, but.
Yeah, it's 162
See, I was already
pages or
here.
something.
It was long.
Yeah, it was pretty long.
Right?
I'll get it to you.
Okay, if you would, please.
If you would resend it to all of
Yeah,
us.
make sure they have
Yeah,
it.
I'll give it to everybody.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Michael Omer.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We have our work cut out for us between this meeting and next. Okay, what?
Your face is priceless.
There you go. I just get paid.
Some Bill
It's funny
Bowers.
to get paid. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what his motivation is.
I don't know. You know, I'm always gone. Well, you can get the kids.
I know, I used to be in the parade there.
Yeah.
What?
I used to be in the parade a lot.
Yeah, I was in the parade and when my kids were little, the
St.
St.
Patrick's Day
Patrick's
parade
Day.
is this Saturday, I used
But
to
you
go all
know-
the time, but I really.